This podcast represents the opinions of Katie Allen, PA, and guests of her show. The content is for informational purposes only and in no way sets up a patient relationship. Consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Now, here's Katie Allen.
Welcome to Feeling Good Naked, podcast helping women over 40 rewrite the script on aging, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Katie Allen, and I've been a PA working in plastic surgery for 20 years. I plan to use this podcast, website, and social media to share my unfiltered thoughts on products, habits, and services for youthful living. It's all from the perspective of an aging, busy professional woman. Which is me, by the way. What makes me an expert in all these things? I'm not. I'm like most of you, trying to gather as much information as I can, as quickly as I can, and having a little bit of FOMO, just feeling like I can't get the information quick enough. I want to help us gather the knowledge from experts on timeless vitality and normalize conversations about maximizing our health mentally, physically, spiritually, and with intimacy. And that includes one of the best parts, our sexual health. I hope we're able to help each other feel healthier, stronger, more vibrant, confident, and maybe even a little sexier. I don't know about you. There's a lot of negativity around the word midlife, a lot of negative Nellies, and I don't want that. It can be viewed as a negative, but why? Why do we have to? Sure, there's a multitude of challenges. There's a lot of nagging body changes, an awakening, start of a new adventure. It's a time for reflection. Begins a rebellion against who we were told to be. People have tried to sell us for decades that midlife is a crisis, a time of regret, breakdowns, and desperate attempts to recapture our youth. What if they're just wrong? But instead, it's more of a catalyst. We've gained just enough wisdom to see through all the noise and the fluff, a time for letting go of the past and having just enough courage to start to live on our own terms. We will explore and talk about identity shifts, second chances, and the deep, unapologetic freedom that comes when we stop trying to prove anything to anyone. This podcast used to be called Make Me Pretty, and I hijacked my own podcast. Yes, I did. And renamed it because that name just wasn't deep enough. Plus, I already was doing talks with this title. Where did that even begin? It really began from thousands of private conversations that I've had with patients, friends, strangers over the years. People feeling uncomfortable to ask questions that they really want to know the answers to, don't have anybody to ask, or they've been told that they can't or they shouldn't. I was in a writing group at one point, had a conservative executive ask me about pubic hair, something that seems like a simple conversation for myself and those that are in my industry. But for many people, if they don't have friends to speak with those things about, they're just kind of sat out there not knowing, and that can affect somebody's confidence. It's an accumulation of a lot of different subjects where people don't know what they don't know. Whether you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever your age, this podcast can be for you. Or it might not be. And that's okay too. A disclaimer for all of this is to tell you, this podcast is girl talk. It's not medical advice. It's not meant to make you feel bad about yourself. These are personal opinions and ideas. And by the way, they're mine. And there might be personal opinions and ideas of other people that I bring on here. But a lot of the base root of it is my opinions. And you know what? My opinions may change tomorrow. Some of you are in seasons that are tougher than others, and the information that's delivered here may not be applicable to your life at this point, but I need you to be a grown-up and figure that part out. When it comes to past traumas, girls, they got to be addressed with a professional. So whether we're talking about mental or physical ailments, please see somebody that is an expert in those fields. And when it comes to any of my discussions on aging, if you have acute or chronic medical concerns, that may pose some challenges, and you have to sift through this and see if what is applicable or not. Many people at this point have had what I would call disruptions or disruptive events in their life that are fairly significant. That can be at any age up until this point. And that can be significant grief, whether it's the loss of a loved one, personal illness, family calamities, divorce, empty nesting, job loss, and some people experience a multitude of these things. I do feel that the difference between sitting in this time frame and looking at it negatively is if we sit in complacency and continue doing the things that we've always done. It's just going to stay there. It's going to stay in the stagnant. But if we want to find the best versions of ourselves, if we want to be released, to have peace, to move forward with who we truly are, then it takes work to get there. And sometimes that work is hard, and it can be ugly and messy and ugh. And when someone used to say that in the past, they didn't know what they were talking about. I was like, I'll do the work. I want to do well at things, but what do they mean? Until I personally had a series of events that tried to break me. And then I finally put my hands up to say, down on my knees, I'm flat on my face. Okay, I'm broken. Then I couldn't understand what they were talking about. Because in order to do the work, to me, you have to find yourself and allow yourself to be the pieces. As anybody that survives things, whether it's in their childhood or later in life, I think if you work hard enough, your brain just says, no, I can do this. I can do this too. And I can survive this. I can pivot and I can be fine. And I can be fine in all things. But the truth is that very thing that is allowing us to continue to live and to somewhat thrive, even in the midst of challenges, is the very thing that at a certain point we have to surrender to, which is crazy. But it's the only way. Brene Brown gives reference to this in saying that we're armoring up. We're putting on the armor basically year by year as we're getting to a certain point in midlife. And we have to make a decision to start removing that armor. And that's really the only way, which leaves us extremely vulnerable for a period of time. But in that vulnerability, we have the ability to connect with ourselves in an incredible way, and then even with other individuals. But when we're in the mess and when we're doing the significant portion of the work or the beginning of that work, it can be rough. It's about unpacking our past and looking at ourselves completely vulnerably naked, celebrating our strengths, accepting our weaknesses so that we can work on those things, acknowledge them, not sit and ruminate on the places where we're weak, but decide partially what portions of those weaknesses do we accept as just not the best versions or not the best things that we have to offer the world. And then what parts of those weaknesses do we need to kind of work on? Because we cannot be all things to all people all the time. We cannot be all versions of any individual. Some of us have tried and failed. Believe me, it'll exhaust you. It'll burn you out. It'll lead to resentment. So up until this point, some of us have had a portion of ourselves that is very true and real. And then there's a portion of ourselves that has been a bit of a facade to get us to this point. I don't hold that against anybody because that's oftentimes what we need to do, is that we need to mold into certain behaviors in order to conform. But in doing the work and looking at what you'll hear sometimes is that shadow work, we have to learn to own our own story, how it really is, not just the story that we want to present to others. And, oh, that's hard sometimes. I still have to question myself sometimes when I'm asked an opinion or an idea is, am I giving you the version that I think you want to hear? Or am I giving you my actual true feeling and opinion? When we truly get real and own our own story, there is no need to edit, filter, or explain any of it. We can honor all that has shaped us up until this point, the good and the bad. We can celebrate the joys, learn from the lessons, give ourselves some grace, heal with intention, leave the past behind. We got to dust ourselves off and create a new vision. Eyes focused forward only. I do believe that getting the mind in a good space, fighting for that continuously, the idea that we try to go after that work more acutely, but I hope to never stop the work. Physically, we're going to have talk about everything from our functionality. If you're not moving now, you got to start moving. We have to go after and start working on strength if we're not already doing it. Mobility, just keep moving no matter what. Flexibility, balance, that becomes more and more important with age. I know myself, I've got to work on those with intention. So not talking about doing it later, not just making a plan for when I'm going to do it, but we've got to start things now. There's a lot to work on. And there's a lot of things that we have to decide also, are we able to accomplish those goals in our current lifestyle and the way that we're currently living, or do we need to make some major life changes? We'll address spiritual health, something that is really important to me. There are studies that show the importance of grounding of a spiritual life. For myself, my faith is really important and is often the thing that grounds me, that allows me to experience the most peace. There are different forms of this. You'll hear me speak about mine specifically in different ways, but it's so important to dive into this and to seek out a spiritual life that is personal for you and can be ever-changing. So on a podcast that has a title called Feeling Good Naked, do you think I'm going to talk about us physically getting naked? Hell yeah. I definitely want to talk about that. I want to help us open up the conversations in safe environment with other girlfriends where we can work through a variety of topics. Where does this come from for me? Well, I would say, depending on the community that you grew up in, the culture that you grew up in, the area, the family, the friend groups, the clubs you may have been involved in, may have had a huge impact on how you view yourself, your own confidence, and may affect how you show up in this world for yourself and for the people around you. This passion to want to help women have these discussions does come from a personal place of having grown up in an extremely conservative culture, which has a lot of positives as well. But there was a lot of shame placed around things like self-care, with a negative connotation around the word vanity, which can mean a lot of different things, and a lot of shame around the subject of sex. We will speak about some of these things more specifically in episodes to come, and there will be blogs specifically addressing this at www.feelinggoodnaked.com to again promote discussions that aid in overall sexual healing. It still is the idea that it promotes monogamy where there has not been safe places to discuss these things. Hopefully we allow that and we promote those discussions, help aid you in your own sexual health and in the health with you and a partner. After all, there are some good things to be had, and life is way too short to not orgasm on a regular basis. So more things to come on all those things. When it comes to the world of functional medicine and longevity medicine, I have tried to take a deep dive into that myself, attending several conferences, reaching out to a lot of experts, and really was looking originally to practice some of those things, not just for myself personally, but to open up a portion of practice for that. And just found myself not really having the time and wanting more experts that are giving more of their time specifically to those things. I personally think the difficulty in those conversations is as the studies are done and research is being completed, that it is hitting the general public at the same time that it is hitting the medical professionals. And in the past, research was done and it may hit the medical individuals within the months to follow, and then it may hit the general public in the years to follow. So in that meantime, you had the original study, and then you also had this period of time that I call it's a non-scientific study, but it's basically the general population is slowly getting that information. And that kind of lets you know more about each of the products and how they affect humans or services or procedures and how that affects. And now we're not getting that time frame. And in fact, I went to a conference recently where somebody spoke about that they were excited that they're being able to fast track some of these studies. So now you have medical or health studies that are being fast tracked, and then we're not having the addition to those years that we would have had where the general public is getting them. So I would just want us to all heed warning to some of that and just realize that, again, the information is hitting so quickly and you can jump on anything, but I would at least pay attention to yourself and how that affects you. It's also any information that comes out, whether I'm talking about it or somebody else, you've got to look at your own body. Do you have a baseline of illness that some products or services may not be good, or you may not be eligible for those things, or those might negatively affect you? And again, I think it's important that we all take personal responsibility for our own health. Physicians or providers that are out there can be a guide on what things may help us all feel better, especially when I address them specifically with aging. Not just live a longer life, but maximize the life that we have to live, whether that's we only have days, whether we have weeks, whether we have months, whether we have years. If we get to maximize that out, the current medical system that we know in America has primarily been designed with a small amount of prevention in mind. And heavily on diagnosing and treating disease. And I do feel that there's a shift towards really trying to work more on the prevention of disease, but that takes personal responsibility. Peter Attia that says that sometimes we start majoring on the minors and minoring on the majors. In general, we first need to go back to some of the basics, which is sleep more, work on reducing the stress when we can, eating as many whole foods as possible, reducing refined sugar, exercising and moving as much as possible, and working on our mental health with intention. So before we even get into the complexities of peptides and these new things that are coming out, we already know some of the things that we need to address. So let's at least start with those things. And let's talk about products, whether it is things that should be ingested to make us feel better, whether it is things that simply are life hacks, whether it's for the home or for our body or anything that just makes things simpler, or things we might like, things that might help us with aging more gracefully. I'm going to try to put those things out there, and they may be addressed more on my website as well. And then you get to decide if they're valuable for you. As we come to a conclusion, a summary that I feel strongly about is that feeling good in our own skin isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about accepting our authentic selves exactly where we are. It's about accepting our bodies exactly where they are. We learn to quiet the noise from the naysayers, the negatives, the impossible requirements. Time that we rewrite the rule as they personally apply to us. Honor the body, the mind, and the spirit, They're carrying us through this life. We all deserve to feel good in our own skin. Not someday, but right now. Thank you to all of you for being here, for listening to me as I spill my thoughts. And for those of you that continue to show support, whether it through comments on social media, your reviews, following, liking, downloading episodes, visiting the website, sharing, purchasing, telling me to keep going. Thank you. Until next time.